Sports Radio 610, Houston Texans breaking news.
It's that kind of day, baby. He said Houston Texans breaking news. T, what you got, man?
Oh, yeah, and it is a blockbuster, Houston. Perk Demir's a blockbuster of a trade for your Texans. Multiple sources reporting the Texans are finalizing a trade that's going to send five-time Pro Bowl left tackle Laremy Tunsil to the Washington Commanders. The Texans, they are getting a second-rounder and a fourth-rounder back from the Commanders, plus a third-rounder for this year. And Houston is sending Tunsil and a fourth-round draft pick to the Washington Commanders. Holy hell, let's talk about it.
Ooh, this is big. This is big, guys. By the way, Luke Morrow is in for Ryan Hughley. Look, this is one move that I never thought the Texans would make. I didn't think the Texans would make this move. But, Tyler, you have to pull out the receipts. There were so many times in the last month, last 6 weeks, where we talked about what could the Texans do to get real serious about taking the next step and becoming a team that could hunt down an AFC or even a Super Bowl. What could they do to fix the immediate problem of the offensive line? And getting out of the Laremy Tunsil business was my number one option.
It was. You tried to tell them, Dirty.
Getting out of the Laremy Tunsil business was my number one option for the Houston Texans in terms of improving as a team and sublime. Let's talk about this from the team's perspective first. This is a DeMeco Ryans, Nick Caserio. Who do they want the identity of the Houston Texans? What do they want the identity of the Houston Texans to look like? What do they want the identity of the Houston Texans to actually be, right? This is a set the standard move. What is the standard on a day-to-day basis in the regular season, in the playoffs, in the offseason, at OTAs, in training camp? What is the standard going to be for the Houston Texans? And I've said this a million times. DeMeco Ryans is the only one that would have been capable of fixing the problem, whether it's Bobby Slowick or Nick Caley, or the O-line coach Cole Popovich. None of those guys were going to be able to hold the other offensive linemen accountable as long as they were allowing Laremy Tunsil to beat to the Laremy Tunsil drum. There was no way this team was going to be a more physical run-blocking team or a more physical offensive unit overall with Laremy Tunsil as the tip of that spear, with Laremy Tunsil as the highest paid guy on the O-line, with Laremy Tunsil with the C on his chest, right? There's no way that the new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, was going to be able to take complete control of this offense and hold guys accountable and set the standard that he wants to set with Laremy Tunsil in a Texans uniform, right? You move to the offensive line. Was the assistant offensive line coach in the same room as Laremy Tunsil over the last couple years. And you want to give that O-line coach the best chance, the best opportunity to coach this unit, to put his stamp on this offensive line. You simply weren't going to be able to do it with Laremy Tunsil in the building. Laremy Tunsil's going to do what Laremy Tunsil wants to do. In the regular season, in the playoffs, in the offseason, he's going to do what he wants to do instead of do what the team needs him to do. And this move, to me, Luke, is more about the team overall, the identity, the culture, the physicality. It's more about fixing the offensive line and allowing the coach, the OC, and the offensive line coach to coach without any kind of resistance whatsoever. This is a big move for the Houston Texans, and I'm a fan of it.
Yeah, I am too. I'm happy to see it happen. We discussed this last week when I was in with Ron, just with the Shaq Mason move, just to see the Texans address this offensive line, acknowledge that what they had was not good enough, and take some big swings, if you will, of moving on from, guys in terms of the investment. If you watch these teams, obviously Tunsil, Shaq, they haven't been good enough. But in terms of the commitment, the investment over the years, it is a big move to move on from it. And I'm glad they're doing it. Happy to see the willingness. I know it's a concern for a lot of fans. Were they actually going to be bold enough to make big sweeping changes on the offensive line? And the answer is yes. And it's it's funny, excitement, and enjoying responses come in on the text line, on YouTube, on everything with the Texans fans right now listening that are so happy to hear this news. I think the biggest shock to me isn't that this happened, but it's the fact that DK Metcalf went for 1 pick and they just got 3 picks back for Laremy Tunsil. Is that what happened? Is that what I heard correctly? The trade?
Well, they got 2 picks back and they swapped 4s. It sounded like you got a 2 and a 3 and you swap 4s is what it sounded like. Is that right? Is that right, Tyler?
The latest here, and just to reaffirm from Diana Rossini, she just put this out. The Commanders get Laremy Tunsil and a 2025 4th rounder. Houston receives a 2025 3rd, a 2025 7th, 2026 2nd, and a 2026 4th.
Oh, wow. So the draft pickers, it's more of a haul, 4 picks.
Yeah,
so you
up
swap
1.
4s and you got a 2, 3, and 7.
Yeah, so you get 3. You get a 2 in there, which is all DK went for. Anyways, I know it's apples to oranges, but that's a bit of a surprise to me that you could get more from him than the Seahawks were able to get for DK Metcalf. And people always say, they don't know what they're doing in D.C. I guess it applies to the football team as well for the Commanders to give up such a package to bring in Tunsil.
Well, here's the deal: is I do wonder, because that's a lot of picks. Because they're getting a great player in Laremy Tunsil, but they're also getting one of the highest paid left tackles in the game. I mean, you got. I wonder how much of that contract the Texans agreed to pay.
That's fair.
Like, I wonder if there's another little caveat there of what the Texans also were paid or were willing to assume the response track. That seems like, given that Laremy Tunsil, they got to now pay him $28 million a year, I think is what it was. I don't know what it is this year, but just in general over the life of the contract, he was one of the higher paid tackles in the game. That pick exchange seems healthy for the Texans if they didn't agree to pay some of that contract. So we'll keep you updated on that right there. I absolutely love the move. Luke, we just talked about in the last segment, because I want to circle back to this. I was in the process of putting a positive twist on a negative reality, right, with the Texans in last year's offseason. And Luke asked me at the end of that segment, Luke said, do you have confidence that the Texans, D'Amico and Nick Caserio, can make that happen? And my confidence was it was an immediate no. And I felt really good about that. This kind of move right here, I can do a 180 real quick. I can do a 180 real quick when you realize, like, Laremy Tunsil is a really good player. There's no doubt about it, right? The reality of it is you had what some believe is the best pass-blocking left tackle in the game, and your quarterback was still the most pressured one of the most pressured quarterbacks in the NFL. Your quarterback was still sacked more times than anybody not named Caleb Williams. So that clearly wasn't working out. You got to get better across the board. And $28 million parked in a left tackle just doesn't seem like the way that this team can get better. So they got draft picks. They'll see exactly what that looks like. And I think the most important part of this Laremy Tunsil trade is you're getting Laremy Tunsil out of the building, right? And this sounds super negative towards Laremy Tunsil, and I guess it is to a certain degree. But when you've got players of that ilk, when you got players that beat to their own drum, and you're an organization that in order to take the next step, that particular position group has to get significantly better, right? They got to communicate better. They got to be more physical. They got to be more coachable. They got, across the board, they've got to be better. And again, you've got the highest paid guy with a C on his chest, doesn't bring to the table what you need brought to the table for your offensive line as a group to make that level of improvement, make that level of jump. That's just the facts. Laremy Tunsil was going to show up and be one of the best pass-protecting left tackles in the game. No doubt about it. He was going to lock down his position. No doubt about it. He has the ability to take some of the best pass rushers in the game and keep them completely out of the box score himself, right? The problem is when you got a C on your chest and you got $25+ million wrapped up in that player, I need that player to make the guys around him better. I need that player to be the tip of the spear and be talked about the way Joe Thuney was talked about when he left Kansas City and getting credit for helping the center and the guard become the players that they actually are. you expect the C on the chest and the highest paid guy on the team to bring to the table. And the reality of it is, in my opinion, I've watched Laremy Tunsil for 5 or 6 seasons now. I don't think Laremy Tunsil's ever been that guy. I don't think he will ever be that guy. And so getting out of the Laremy Tunsil business I think is the biggest, boldest move. I'm just keeping it straight right here. I think getting out of the Laremy Tunsil business is the biggest, boldest move that the Houston Texans, DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio can make to show us, all the media, their team, the world, that they are serious about this team getting better and winning a damn Super Bowl. As crazy as that sounds,
hit the money sign again.
As crazy as that sounds, I wholeheartedly believe that right there.
I think that's fair. I think it is addition by subtraction. He led the league in penalties for linemen last year. That obviously is less than ideal. We mentioned the money, by the way. He has a base salary of $21 million for each of the next 2 seasons. So that was the contract that we'll see if the Texans have to chip in for any of that or how much of that here over the next 2 years.
Is that just the base salary? What are the per game bonuses? Because all those bonuses go with it.
Like you have a roster bonus. There's a workout bonus.
All that goes with it.
So total that up. This is according to Spotrac. That's not a whole lot more. That's only about another, according to this, about $500,000. So okay. The cap hit they have him at is $21.3 million for each of the next 2 seasons. So, anyways, and so you talk about being, the highest paid and the 23rd best tackle in the league. So obviously, the juice is no longer worth the squeeze for Tunsil. And now, as I said, addition by subtraction, and it gives you a chance to try to start over with those draft picks by developing maybe Fisher, and who knows, that might not work out either. But at least you're trying something different because what we've been seeing hasn't been good enough, hasn't been working. Tunsil hasn't been good enough, and so we all know the definition of insanity, and that would be trying to running back. That would be attempting to run back this group next year. So no, happy to see the Texans start clean a little bit, clean slate here on this offensive line. Shaq Mason, Tunsil gone. And now you have a couple extra draft picks here in the future, and you try to recreate this offensive line because that should be the top priority for this team.
Well, this is the biggest, boldest move they can make to do exactly what you just said, which is rebuild and build the offensive line with the right identity, with the right physicality, and let the coaches they just hired do their work free of any kind of roadblocks, if you will. In the form of your highest paid player with a captain on your chest. I absolutely love this move for DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio. This gets me as jacked up as I've been about any move that the Texans may have ever made. Because let's be honest, when they drafted Deshaun Watson, I liked him, but I wasn't real sure what the hell they were doing. When they drafted C.J. Stroud, I was on the Bryce, what's his name? What's the kid's name in Carolina?
Bryce Young.
I was on the Bryce Young train, and like CJ, but I was on a Bryce Young train at that point in time. Loved the Will Anderson they were moving up to get. This one right here. When it comes to giving yourself a chance to win a Super Bowl and get better from second round of the playoffs and 10 wins in a season, this one right here can get me good and turned on. Now,